It's December 19th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with another rate cut by the U.S. Federal Reserve. America's central bank slashed interest rates for a third time on Wednesday, but signaled a slower pace for cuts in 2025. The widely expected cut made all three major indexes see their biggest daily decline in months. The state anti-corruption investigation team, the CIO, will now take control of the martial law order-related investigation into President Yoon Suk-yeol, with the prosecution handing over the lead. But the CIO still needs to send the case back to the prosecution after completing its investigations. Acting President and Prime Minister Han Duck-soo is holding a special cabinet meeting this morning, where he is expected for the first time to exercise his executive right to request a reconsideration by vetoing 6 contentious bills proposed by the main opposition party. The U.S. Federal Reserve went ahead with another rate cut, raising questions about its balancing act between controlling inflation and supporting economic growth. Our Moon Hae-ryun starts us off.
The Fed has cut rates once again, despite slower than expected progress made on inflation in the United States. On Wednesday local time, following the last Federal Open Market Committee meeting of the year, Fed policymakers slashed the benchmark interest rate by 25 basis points, bringing it down to the 4.25 to 4.5% range. The latest action brings the total cut made since September to 1 full percentage point and comes despite inflation continuing to remain stubbornly above the Fed's 2% target. The U.S. Personal Consumption Price Expenditures Index, the Fed's gauge of inflation, rose to 2.8% in October, while the Consumer Price Index jumped 2.7% in November.
We know that reducing policy restraint too fast or too much could hinder progress on inflation. At the same time, reducing policy restraint too slowly or too little could unduly weaken economic activity and employment.
Fed officials also made some adjustments to their forecasts for next year, projecting a slower pace of rate cuts compared to its September forecast, as well as persisting inflation. By the end of 2025, they see 2 rate deductions of 25 basis points each, which is half a percentage point less than what they anticipated 3 months ago. Inflation forecasts also jumped from 2.1% to 2.5%. These are the first projections since Donald Trump was elected the next president of the United States, and Powell remarked that it is premature to make any conclusions on how possible tariffs could affect consumer inflation. Following the Fed's decision, Wall Street tumbled, with the Dow Jones falling for the 10th day straight to mark its longest downward slope since 1974. The tech-heavy Nasdaq and benchmark S&P 500 also tallied their largest drops in months. This latest decision from the Fed brings the interest rate gap between South Korea and the U.S. back down to 1.5 percentage points, after it widened to 1.75 percentage points in September. Finance authorities, including the country's finance minister and the Bank of Korea's governor, held a meeting on Thursday morning to discuss these developments and the domestic economic situation. The finance ministry and central banks said they would continue to operate an around-the-clock system to monitor the foreign exchange market and pledged to do their best to stabilize financial markets. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Multiple investigation teams have been looking into the December 3rd emergency martial law. But now, the high-ranking officials' crime investigation agency will take charge of the case. Our Kim Jung-seol tells us more.
The investigation into the December 3rd martial law has taken a new turn. On Wednesday, the prosecution transferred the case to the Corruption Investigation Office for High-Ranking Officials, or the CIO. The move follows concerns over overlapping investigations, with the prosecution, police, and the CIO all handling the same case. Officials stated that the transfer was meant to prevent further complications and address concerns about the legitimacy of the charges. However, after the decision was made, there was reportedly resistance within the prosecution's special investigation team, as they claimed to have made significant progress and were frustrated by the sudden change. The transfer case includes allegations of treason against President Yoon Suk-yeol and former Safety Minister Lee Sang-min. While the CIO will now lead the investigation, it does not have the power to charge a sitting president. If evidence is found, the case will be referred back to the prosecution for formal charges. Meanwhile, the investigation continues to focus on the military's role during the martial law period. Around 1,500 soldiers were deployed with rifles, sniper rifles, tasers, and drone jamming devices, along with 10,000 rounds of live ammunition. 100 military vehicles and 12 helicopters were also involved in the operation. Earlier this week on Tuesday, police made a second attempt to raid the presidential office for crucial communication records, but once again, their efforts were blocked by security. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
Acting President and Prime Minister Han Duck-soo is likely to veto 6 contentious bills at a cabinet meeting on Thursday. He would be exercising his executive right to request a reconsideration for the first time as he takes charge of the nation's affairs during President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment proceedings. According to Han's office, the interim leader is holding an extraordinary cabinet meeting from 10 a.m. at the Seoul government complex. He is reportedly leaning towards vetoing the bills that the opposition Democratic Party railroaded through at the National Assembly last month. These include laws on parliamentary authority, subsidies, and price stabilization measures for grain, agriculture, and fishery products. Now, after the cabinet meeting, Han will chair a policy coordination meeting, then receive a briefing on national security issues. And Korea's top economic and diplomatic chief stepped up to provide reassurances that things are under control on the economic and security fronts, taming concerns over the potential ripple effects of the country's political chaos. Kim Bo-kyung has this report.
South Korea's constitutional system and emergency response mechanisms are functioning well, despite heightened uncertainties stemming from recent domestic and international factors. This, according to Deputy Prime Minister Choi Sang-mok, who also serves as Minister of Economy and Finance. The Finance and Foreign Ministries jointly held a press conference with foreign correspondents in Seoul on Wednesday to address concerns the international community might have over South Korea's economic and diplomatic situation. The government responded promptly to the volatile financial and foreign exchange situation following the martial law decree imposition and Yoon's impeachment, Choi said, stabilizing the markets. Political uncertainty, too, is resolving, according to Choi, with the budget and key tax bills being passed in the National Assembly on December 10th, through close cooperation between the government and both the ruling and opposition parties. While stressing how 3 major global credit rating agencies assessed that Seoul's political situation would only have a limited impact on its credit rating, Choi vowed to stay vigilant.
We will remain vigilant and bring together all available public and private sector resources to manage the economy as stably as possible, given the possibility of market fluctuations and the potential dampening of economic sentiment.
The Finance Ministry's top priority will be to maintain external trust and confidence in the South Korean economy. For this, Choi pledged to operate a 24-hour monitoring system for the financial and foreign exchange markets and enhance incentives for foreign investment. The ministry will develop plans to strengthen fundamental industrial competitiveness, and for the people's livelihoods, it plans to front-load budget spending into the first half of next year to bolster the economy. The economic policy direction for 2025 will also soon be announced. Meanwhile, though there could be some questions over the sustainability of Seoul's foreign policy, Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol emphasized he would fully maintain the current policy under the acting presidency.
We will maintain a steadfast ROK-US alliance and friendly cooperation with Japan and actively work to ensure the momentum for trilateral cooperation among Korea, the US, and Japan is sustained.
While adding South Korea will brace for a resumption of a U.S.-North Korea dialogue under the Donald Trump administration, the ministry added it will consult closely with China to further improve bilateral ties. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
The U.S. Senate on Wednesday passed the National Defense Authorization Act for the 2024-2025 fiscal year. The bill also includes provisions to maintain the current level of U.S. troops stationed here in South Korea ahead of President-elect Donald Trump's return to the Oval Office next month. Lee Seung-ja has more.
The U.S. Senate on Wednesday passed the National Defense Authorization Act for the 2025 fiscal year, with 85 votes in favor and 14 against. The bill, worth $895.2 billion, also includes provisions to maintain the current level of U.S. troops stationed in South Korea. According to the NDAA, the budget allows for the maintaining of approximately 28,500 U.S. Forces Korea troops, strengthening the mutual defense industrial base and reaffirming extended deterrence commitment, utilizing all U.S. defense capabilities. The Pentagon was also ordered to report on plans to strengthen the U.S. extended deterrence commitment to South Korea and ways to advance defense cooperation between Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo. The passage of the budget bill also comes almost a month before President-elect Donald Trump's return to the Oval Office. Trump has previously threatened to pull U.S. troops out of South Korea and has demanded that Seoul increases its contribution to the cost of stationing USFK troops. Meanwhile, top Democrats and Republicans at the U.S. Congress reached an agreement on Wednesday on a continuing resolution preventing a possible government shutdown just before the start of the new U.S. administration. The bill allows for the federal agencies to be funded through March 14th. The stopgap measure would keep the roughly $6.2 trillion federal budget running at its current level and also includes a $100.4 billion package in new emergency funding to help states like North Carolina and Florida recover from recent natural disasters. While the vote is likely to pass, should lawmakers fail to act in time, the government would enter a partial shutdown beginning on Saturday. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
With just a month left until he returns to the Oval Office, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump on Tuesday held his first news conference since his election victory 6 weeks ago. Let's discuss more with Voice of America correspondent Chris Keskeho. Welcome back, Chris.
Good to be with you.
So, Chris, during his news conference on Tuesday, did he hint at the direction that he intends to pursue on the diplomatic front once he takes office next month?
Yeah, that news conference on Tuesday, President-elect Trump said he's spoken with representatives of more than 100 countries. Now, experts predict that while he might show interest in resuming dialogue with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, it's unlikely to be an early priority. Voice of America spoke with Gary Seymour, who's the former White House coordinator for weapons of mass destruction, and he said that Trump might be willing to resume summit diplomacy with Kim Jong-un, but such discussions are unlikely to be high on the administration's agenda, at least in the first few days of the administration. And Seymour cites the war in Ukraine, various conflicts in the Middle East, and even in Asia, U.S.-China relations as being more pressing issues for the new administration to deal with. Meanwhile, Daniel Snyder, who's a lecturer in East Asian Studies at Stanford University in California, highlighted challenges for South Korea if U.S.-North Korea talks do resume. He said Trump might bypass South Korea entirely, as he did during his first term.
So handling Korean Peninsula issues may not be his priority, but has there been any reaction from Trump regarding the impeachment of the South Korean president and the whole political turmoil resulting from the martial law order?
So far, no reaction from the incoming President-elect Trump or any of his key cabinet appointees as of now.
Well, but what about the current Biden administration? How is it viewing the political drama here in the country?
Well, the White House said that U.S. President Biden had spoken with acting President Han Duck-soo, reaffirming the ironclad commitment of the United States to the people of the ROK, using the abbreviation for South Korea's formal name, the Republic of Korea. Biden also expressed confidence that the alliance between the two countries would remain the linchpin for peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific region. Meanwhile, State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said that despite the change of leadership in the U.S. and Japan and the passage of impeachment articles against South Korean President Yoon, one thing that remains unchanged is the fundamental interests of all three countries, and it is in the fundamental interests of all three countries to continue the trilateral relationship between the United States, South Korea, and Japan.
Yeah, it is a relief to hear that the security alliance between South Korea, the U.S., and also the trilateral security alliance between Seoul, Washington, Tokyo is solid for now. Now, Chris, before I let you go, I'd like to cover the heated debate over the possibility of TikTok being banned over in the U.S., with the Supreme Court now agreeing to hear arguments next month. What's at stake?
The Supreme Court justices will hear arguments on January 10th. At issue is whether the federal law that was passed in April that calls for the sale of TikTok, or it could face a ban if its Chinese parent company does not sell it, whether that is unconstitutional and violates the First Amendment protections involving free speech. Now, this law set a January 19th deadline for TikTok to be sold or else face a ban in the U.S. The popular social media platform has more than 170 million users in the U.S. Now, it's unclear how quickly a Supreme Court decision might come, but the High Court still could act after the arguments to keep the law from taking effect pending a final ruling if at least five of the 9 justices think that the law is unconstitutional and a violation of First Amendment protections of free speech.
Well, then how is the president-elect trying to handle the issue? I mean, it looks like he does have a warm spot for TikTok since he also met with the TikTok CEO this week, right?
Right. Trump has had a change of heart on TikTok over the past several years, especially since his first administration, his first term in office, when he was one of the people calling to ban TikTok. But now he's pledging, as he did during his campaign, to save TikTok. And like you said, he met with TikTok CEO Shou Zi-Chew at Mar-a-Lago on Monday, and he says his administration would take a look at the situation. Now, TikTok's parent company ByteDance says that a shutdown lasting just a month in the U.S. could cause TikTok to lose about 1/3 of its daily users in this country and, of course, significant advertising revenue.
We'll have to get back to you next month. Chris, thanks so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Good to be with you again.
We are now a week away from the Christmas day. For those of you here in Seoul looking to enjoy the joyous holiday vibe, here are a few spots to check out. Here's our An Sung-jin.
The year-end festivities have returned. It's the season where friends and families gather together to celebrate and get the feel of Christmas. Ornaments glisten and stars shine on Christmas trees, creating the perfect photo spot.
Department stores have geared up for Christmas this year to attract visitors, and this Christmas market offers various activities, including a carousel ride.
From glue vine to a giant Christmas tree, this Christmas market has opened in the center of Seoul. With more than 40 Christmas-themed shops, it lures in visitors with its vivid colors.
It's been so busy that I didn't even know it was Christmas, but I'm glad I get to spend time with my kid out here like this.
I love to be able to find like typical desserts and stuff from Europe, let's say, and it's amazing because you have the spirit of Christmas here, even in Korea.
In another part of the city, this digital media facade shows Christmas scenes through illustrations and lights beaming from the screen.
The decorations here are so fancy. It's nice to be here.
Though we're now retired designers, we've worked in this area for a long time, so it's nice to see all the decorations out here.
Retailers are rushing to showcase their annual year-end decorations, not only for marketing their brand image, but also to help boost declining in-person purchases. Stores this year have focused on not only displays, but more interactive spaces to keep customers for a longer time. A professor says these eye-grabbing attractions could boost domestic consumption.
People tend to open their wallet when they're a bit more excited, and these decorations act as a catalyst for that. Not only for those actually passing by with social media, it induces consumption, leading to a ripple effect of drawing in more people.
These Christmas decorations not only bring a festive atmosphere, but also a chance to boost the local economy. An Song-jin, Arirang News.
Now, let's take a look at the stories from around the world with our Kim Xiang. Good morning, Xiang.
Good morning, Dami.
So I hear you have an update on the assassination of a top Russian general. Tell us more.
Yeah, that's right. Following the assassination in Moscow of Russia's head of the Radiation, Chemical and Biological Protection Forces, Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov, Russian authorities say they have detained a suspect. Now, Russia's investigative committee said on Wednesday that it has detained a 29-year-old man from Uzbekistan who has admitted to being recruited by Ukrainian special services and carrying out the assassination. The suspect, who was identified by Russian news agency TASS as Akhmat Kurvanov, said he was offered $100,000 and resettlement in a European country in exchange for killing Lieutenant General Kirillov. Now, Russia's Federal Security Services has published a video confession from the suspect, although it is not clear under what conditions he was admitting to the crimes. The FSB said the Uzbek suspect arrived in Moscow and received specific instructions, including an improvised explosive device used to carry out the assassination under Ukraine's instructions. Meanwhile, Russia's foreign ministry said that it will raise the assassination at the United Nations Security Council meeting on Friday. Now, Kirillov is the most senior Russian military official known to be killed since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. In Mumbai, an Indian Navy speedboat crashed into a passenger ferry, causing it to capsize on Wednesday, killing at least 13 people. According to the Times of India, the ferry had some 110 people on board, 20 of which were children, and the Navy boat had 6 on board. A combined rescue effort by the Indian Coast Guard, Navy and the Marine Police has rescued 101 passengers. Maharashtra State Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis said that the passenger boat named Neel Kamal was heading to Elephanta Island from Mumbai's Gateway of India when the crash took place. Now, the Indian Navy stated that its craft lost control due to an engine malfunction while undertaking engine trials in Mumbai harbour. 2 Chinese astronauts from the Shenzhou 19 spaceflight completed a 9-hour and 6-minute spacewalk on Tuesday, setting a new record for the world's longest spacewalk. Now, according to China's manned space agency, Kai Zhuzhe and Song Lingdong, working from the Tiangong space station, completed their mission's first extravehicular activity, better known as a spacewalk, at 9:57 p.m. Beijing time on Tuesday. The 9-hour, 6-minute spacewalk broke the previous record of 8 hours and 56 minutes set in 2001 by American astronauts James Voss and Susan Helms. The Shenzhou 19 mission, which included China's first female space engineer, will continue with a series of scientific and technical experiments in its 6-month mission aboard the Tiangong space station. The world's oldest known complete tablet, inscribed with the 10 Commandments, was sold for $5.04 million at an auction in New York City on Wednesday. The approximately 1,500-year-old marble tablet, dating back to the late Roman Byzantine era, weighs about 52 kilograms and is some 61 centimeters in height. Now, it fetched well over its original estimate of $1 to $2 million. The still visible text of the 10 Commandments is written in Paleo-Hebrew script. According to the auction house Sotheby's, the tablet was excavated in 1913 during railway construction in southern Israel.
The
The coldest air of the season has settled onto many regions with sub-zero wind chills. Even Busan had a sub-zero morning temperatures. A cold wave advisory remains in place for much of the northern parts of South Korea. Paju saw ratings dropping down to below minus 15 degrees. But after a frigid start, temperatures return to norms along with plenty of winter sunshine. Tomorrow morning should be much more comfortable than today, so it's going to be more bearable today. Afternoon highs will go up 1 to 5 degrees higher than yesterday in most parts, topping out at 5 degrees Celsius in the capital and Chuncheon, Daegu at 8 degrees, Busan at 10 degrees Celsius. Sunny skies are expected nationwide. Meanwhile, East Coast regions and parts of Seoul are still under a dry weather advisory. We are expecting winter precipitation in most parts of Korea on Saturday, which is winter solstice. Then another severe cold snap will hit the nation on Sunday and into early next week. Well, that's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That's all we have for this morning. We will be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.